Hey folks, so we're going to take another look at the Pathfinders here in Illustrator. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to need a couple of rectangles here to work with. So grab a few of them just like this. And we spent time in our first video playing around with the shape builder tool and then these shape modes, and that's cool, but really we want to focus on the Pathfinders right now. So I'm going to select all of these objects, and just like before, I'll zoom in so we can see it. You start to see how these objects overlap one another, and they start to make these other shapes. Like here's a rectangle, here's another one. There's this now weird trapezoid shape here, this almost like L-shaped trapezoid, and then this other L shape. So if I go ahead and I come to Pathfinders and I click right on this one here called Divide, watch what happens. Now you see black lines everywhere, you see outlines. And what it actually does is it takes all those overlapping shapes and it creates the actual objects for them. Now, these objects are all independent now, but if you go ahead and grab them, you're going to find out that they are all grouped, because that's what Pathfinders do. So if I go up to Object and Ungroup, I can select each one of these things individually. And so if I want to, I could go ahead and I can apply different colors to them, like this. And along with that, along with applying different colors to them, I can select them and I can move them apart from one another just like this. And it sounds like silly and simple because it is, but this is the kind of stuff that you'll see on like a really kind of like modern logo or something like that. It's just like a couple objects next to one another that have this little bit of separation of space in between them, right? And it's just a common thing you'll see in design, where these objects are almost puzzle piecing into one another. And in all honesty, they were just created as whatever they are, layering on top of one another, and then this thing does it for you, right? This divide does it for you. So it's an actual super cool tool, and it works out. I won't lie, I like playing around with things like this with like not a percent sign, but like a number. And so I'll take something like a number 5 here, for example. Kind of an interesting shape. And I will go ahead and go to type and create outlines with it. And I will go ahead and, throw a color on there, like, a red. All right. So then I'm going to take this again and I don't know, I'll duplicate it and I'll rotate it just like this. All right. And on both of these things, I will toss a stroke just so we can see it for our own purposes. And now select them both and I'll throw that on there. And voila. I end up having like some cool looking things that I can work with, some interesting shapes that maybe I wouldn't have had before. Look at these, that's a pretty cool kind of like, kind of curve going on. So is this one here, right? These are some, kind of fun kind of shapes. And again, just like I was talking about in the last video, it's not that you can't do these things in the pen tool. You 100% can. But if you do it like this, man, it's so much faster. It blows your mind. And then, so if I wanted to, I could then, since I've used 1.5 to cut the other one up, I literally could go ahead and probably delete part of these things. And then like reconstitute this 5 really easily, but make it like a little bit more interesting than it was, like a minute ago. Maybe like that. And like if you've ever seen, I don't know, like sci-fi movies or something like that, this is the kind of thing that you would see, in that. Or like if again, I go back to the logo thing, that's like a really stylized looking 5. All it was a regular old 5 in like Minion Pro, and I just rotated it on top of itself and I cut it apart with this divide function here. So it's really not all that much going on. But that is the divide function. All right, next, let's go ahead and let's grab a couple shapes. Let's grab a circle and a rectangle. Oops. Let's make that circle different color. Red and green holiday colors, right? So next we have this thing here called trim. So let's select the both of these things and I'll click on trim, and what it does is this. I'll ungroup this. It essentially goes ahead and does a very similar thing to minus front, except it doesn't get rid of that green circle. Now, what it did get rid of, though, is it got rid of the strokes. And the reason why it's doing that is because it won't do like a double stroke, essentially. You can go back in here and you can apply your own stroke. That's no problem whatsoever. Like, it's not like it's gone and you can't ever get it back. But do you see how like it would look a little funky if I threw that stroke in here to begin with? Like, it would look just a little weird. So that's why it goes ahead and does that. So again, what it does is it allows me to do something along these lines. Oops. All right, I'll grab these two objects here and I'll trim them. And then it just will, after I ungroup it, it will just make it so like that front shape here cuts out of that shape below it, right? So again, this is just another one of those things that makes it easy for us to simply go ahead and cut shapes apart. So this is just kind of a fun little tool to work with when you're doing that. A lot of times I kind of think about Illustrator in a sense of like it's I have like construction paper, and I can cut things apart and I can re-put them together and things like that. And imagine like if you had that construction paper and you had this like special kind of glue that like you could just literally put two pieces of paper together, but it wasn't like sticky looking and it didn't look kind of like crap. And that's essentially what these tools can do, right? Or imagine you could like have a nice smooth cut. If you cut out a circle, you could use that circle to cut everything else out. Again, that's what these tools can do. So that is trim. Next we have merge. Okay. So let's start out with a couple shapes. Again, I'll overlap them on top of one another. I'll select the two of these things and now I'm going to click merge. And it takes the stroke away again, and if I ungroup these things, it does almost the same exact thing. So what's the difference then between trim and between merge? Not much. Just going to be honest with you there. There's not a whole lot of difference there. What if you use the same shape like this, and I merge them together? Oh, well, that's a little bit different, right? So what that did is essentially that did what unite does. So hold on, let's try that one more time. If I do this, if I have an orange star and a blue box, and I go ahead and I merge them, it goes ahead and makes them separate from one another. I wonder though, I have an idea. What if I went ahead and I had the same color blue as this and this, and I select the two of them and I merge them? And actually blue is a bad color to use for this example, but yellow is much better because you can see here the star shape and you can see the box shape, and then you can see this weird shape that intersects between them. Now when I merge them, look at that, that went together. So, okay. So merge is kind of like unite, and it's also kind of like trim, but it is like unite when I'm using objects that are the same color, right? And it's like trim if I'm using objects that are two different colors. So like trim, it didn't matter what color anything was, it would still trim it, right? And unite, it just would make the top, whatever color the top shape was, that would be the dominant shape, and that would be everything else. So that's the difference between the two tools, Okay, so, and there's definitely applications in which those can be available. And the cool thing about the Pathfinders is, and I'll be completely honest with you, I use some, but I don't use all of them, right? And what I can do is I, pick and choose which ones I really like to use for a given circumstance. Next, we have crop. So if I go ahead and I click on crop, what it's going to do is it's going to select, it's going to almost do what intersect does, except it's a little bit different in the fact that if I have strokes in play like this, whatever the dominant one is, okay, so the one on top, right, so I'll make this like a blue stroke. If I select these two things and I click on crop, then essentially what it does is it'll hide the stroke. But if I click on these things and they are the same colors, check this out, crop, and I have a piece here, and then I've got this other piece right here. So if I ungroup these things and I click right here, this is actually a shape. And if I select it, I should be able to apply a color to it like this. And I could even go ahead and separate these things apart from one another. So essentially what it does for you is it will do somewhat like a minus front of, in a way, but then it also gives you an extra kind of piece to work with. I'll be honest, I don't use it. I don't use it because it's like I have to think harder to use it, to be honest with you, versus when I just do a minus front. A lot of times, because this symbol and this symbol, the crop and the intersect look so similar, people think they're the same thing, but they're not. All right, next we have outline. Okay, and so to do outline, I'll go ahead and I'll grab two objects just like this. I'll select the both of them and I'll click outline, and it creates outlines. Very simple, right? Now, both of my shapes did not have strokes on it, so let's go ahead and give them a stroke and try this one more time. Create outlines, and essentially it will just go ahead and it'll turn everything into no fill. Now, let's go back one more time, okay? Let's turn our strokes off. Let's make them both the same color. Oops. Yeah, like this. Now let's try outline. And still, it goes ahead and it does that. But if I roll over these things, they are separated from one another. So let's select this and say object and ungroup. And then I can grab these things and I can apply a different color to them. Now, what it also did, along with creating these boxes in many ways, is there's a centerpiece, right? But it's no longer a piece. It's four pieces, right? These are the shape. These are the strokes. So if I go ahead and I increase the stroke value, you can see them. There you go. Oops, missed one. And there you are. So if you want, it's like intersect. Or I take that back. It's more like exclude, except the whole still holds the actual lines there. But they're not connected like a shape. They're simply paths. And last but not least, two shapes like this. We have minus back. So check it out, right? So just so we're aware, minus front, bam, took away that front thing, right? Minus back takes away the back one. It's just the complete opposite to minus front. That's all. It just takes away what was in the back. And again, you could have done that with the shape builder tool, just picking this one instead and this one instead. So instead of going the other way around. So those are those Pathfinders. Again, not too difficult, very similar, but all of these used regularly can really, really, really help. They're gonna, really allow you to create complex shapes to go into more complex illustrations and drawings, and they're gonna make you a whole lot more efficient because you can do it a lot faster than if you're designing everything by hand. Because while frankly I love the pencil tool and I love the pen tool, they take time, and you can get a lot done with Pathfinders super quick. So I recommend using them to the best of your ability, and not forgetting how they can really help you out. And good luck, and thank you.